One command, 14 resources, an entire environment built in under a minute and torn down just as easily. That's the promise of infrastructure as code, and it's exactly what the HashiCorp Terraform Associate certification proves you can do. Welcome to DevWise. I'm your guide, and this is the series where we turn the messy, sprawling world of SRE and DevOps into calm, practical knowledge. Let's begin. Let's start with the facts, because half the anxiety around any exam comes from simply not knowing what you're walking into. The HashiCorp Certified Terraform Associate is the industry's foundational credential for infrastructure as code. Version 004 launched on the 8th of January 2026, replacing the 003 exam, and it's aligned with Terraform 1.12. Here's the shape of it. The exam costs $70.50, making it one of the most affordable certifications in cloud and DevOps. You'll have 1 hour to answer roughly 57 to 60 questions. Every question is multiple choice or multiple select. There are no hands-on labs in this exam, though. As you'll see, hands-on practice is still the only reliable way to pass it. It's delivered online, proctored through Certiverse. You'll need a quiet room, a webcam, a system check, and an identity document. Once you pass, the credential is valid for 2 years. One thing people often get wrong: this exam is provider agnostic. You don't need to be an AWS expert or an Azure expert. The questions test Terraform itself, its language, its workflow, its state model, not any particular cloud. If all your experience is with one provider, that's perfectly fine. And is it worth it? At $70, the return on investment is hard to argue with. For junior and mid-level engineers especially, it's a recognized signal that you genuinely understand how modern infrastructure is built. For senior engineers, think of it as formalizing what you already do, and it's the prerequisite step toward HashiCorp's hands-on professional certification. Now, if you've watched older videos or bought a course before January 2026, listen closely, because this is where they fall short. The 004 exam isn't a cosmetic refresh. It re-anchors the objectives to Terraform 1.12 and expands several areas to match how teams actually run Terraform in production today. First, lifecycle behavior. The new exam explicitly tests depends on and the create before destroy lifecycle rule. You need to know not just the syntax, but the why. When Terraform's implicit dependency graph isn't enough, and how create before destroy prevents downtime when replacing resources that something else relies on. Second, custom conditions. Terraform lets you validate your own assumptions. Variable validation blocks, preconditions, and postconditions. The 004 exam expects you to read these, write them, and understand when each one runs. Third, handling sensitive data has grown up. Beyond marking variables as sensitive, the new exam covers ephemeral values and write-only arguments, ways of passing secrets through Terraform without them ever landing in your state file. This is a genuinely important shift, because state files have historically been the soft underbelly of Terraform security. And fourth, HCP Terraform, the platform formerly known as Terraform Cloud, gets expanded coverage, including projects, which are how you group and organize workspaces at scale. Everything else you may have studied, the core workflow, state, modules, provisioners, still matters. But these 4 areas are where 004 separates current candidates from those studying stale material. The exam blueprint is organized into 9 objectives. I'll take you through each one, what it covers, and what the examiners are really probing for. Treat this section as your checklist. If you can't confidently explain every item I mention, that's where your study time goes. Objective 1. Understand infrastructure as code. Why do we do this at all? Repeatability, versioning, peer review, disaster recovery. Expect a question or 2, contrasting manual provisioning with declarative code. Easy marks if you can articulate the benefits. Objective 2. Terraform's purpose and how it differs from other tools. The key ideas. Terraform is multi-cloud and provider agnostic. It provisions infrastructure, whereas tools like Ansible primarily configure what already exists. And its state file is what lets it know the difference between what you've declared and what actually exists. Objective 3. The basics. Installing Terraform and, crucially, providers. Know that providers are plugins fetched during Terraform init, that provider versions are recorded in the dependency lock file, and how version constraints like the pessimistic operator, the tilde greater than symbol, actually behave. Version constraint questions are a perennial favorite. Objective 4. Using Terraform outside the happy path. This means Terraform import for bringing existing infrastructure under management. The Terraform state subcommands list, show, move, and remove, and debugging with the tflog environment variable. The 004 exam also leans on lifecycle nuances here, as we discussed earlier. Objective 5. Modules, how to call a module, pass input variables, and read its outputs. Know where modules can come from, the public registry, Git, local paths, and how module versioning works. A classic question: variables declared inside a child module are not automatically visible to the root module. You must wire inputs and outputs explicitly. Objective 6. The core workflow: write, plan, apply. Understand what each stage does. That plan is a dry run producing an execution plan. That apply can take a saved plan file. And what Terraform destroy, really apply with the destroy flag, does. This objective is the heart of the exam. Objective 7. State. Why state exists. The default local backend, remote backends for teams, state locking to prevent corruption, and, security critical, the fact that state can contain secrets in plain text, which is precisely why 004's new ephemeral and write-only features exist. Expect scenario questions about teams stepping on each other's state. Objective 8. The language itself. Variables and their precedents. Command line flags beat tf-vars files, which beat environment variables, which beat defaults. Outputs, locals, data sources versus resources, count versus for each, built-in functions, and the new custom condition blocks. This is the largest objective by question share, so give it proportionate study time. And Objective 9, HCP, Terraform, workspaces, remote runs, the private registry, policy as code with Sentinel, and, new for 004, projects as the organizing layer above workspaces. Even if you only ever use open source Terraform at work, do not skip this. It's a meaningful slice of the exam, and it's where unprepared candidates bleed marks. Let's make this concrete. Here's a minimal but complete configuration. A single S3 bucket in the London region, with a random suffix, so the name is globally unique, and an output to report the bucket name back to us. First, Terraform init. Watch what happens. Terraform reads our required providers block, downloads the AWS and random providers as plugins, and writes a dependency lock file. If an exam question asks what init does, this is it. Backend initialization, provider installation, module download. Next, Terraform FMT to standardize formatting, and Terraform validate to check the configuration is syntactically valid and internally consistent. Note that validate does not contact any cloud provider, a detail the exam loves. Now, Terraform plan. Terraform refreshes its view of the world, compares the desired state in our code with the recorded state, currently empty, and proposes 2 additions. Nothing has been created yet. A plan is always safe to run. Terraform apply. We're shown the plan again. We confirm with yes, and Terraform builds the dependency graph, creates the random ID first, then the bucket that depends on it. There's our output, the bucket name, printed at the end. A quick look at Terraform state list shows both resources now tracked in state. And finally, because we're tidy engineers, Terraform Destroy removes everything in reverse dependency order. If you internalize just this loop, init, plan, apply, inspect, destroy, and can predict what each command will and won't do, you've already secured a substantial portion of your pass mark. So, how do you actually prepare? Here's the plan I'd give a colleague. 6 weeks, an hour a day, assuming you're newer to Terraform. If you already use it at work, compress this to 3 or 4. Weeks 1 and 2, fundamentals by doing. Work through HashiCorp's official Get Started tutorials on the developer site. They're free, and they're written by the people who write the exam. Build small things, break them, read the plan output until it stops feeling like noise. Week 3, the language. Variables, outputs, locals, functions, expressions, count and for each, and write at least one validation block and one precondition by hand. Reading about custom conditions is not the same as writing one. Week 4, state and collaboration. Migrate a local state to a remote backend. Deliberately import an existing resource. Run the state subcommands until they're muscle memory. Then create a free HCP Terraform account and run a plan remotely. You will be tested on it. Week 5, modules and the new 004 material. Publish a tiny module to a Git repo and consume it. Practice create before destroy scenarios. Read the official documentation pages on ephemeral values. They're short, and they're new enough that practice exams may not cover them well yet. Week 6, rehearsal. Take the official sample questions first, then full-length practice exams. Your target is scoring consistently above 85% before you book. Review every wrong answer until you can explain why the right one is right. That explanation step is where the learning actually happens. One honest warning: candidates who study concepts alone, without real hands-on time, fail this exam at a startling rate. The questions are scenario-based. They reward people who have actually felt Terraform behave. A few words on the day itself. Book a time when your home is quiet. Certiverse's proctoring requires a system check, a room scan, and photo ID. Do the system check the day before, not 5 minutes before. Clear your desk completely. Even notes you'd never look at can cause problems. During the exam, 1 hour for roughly 60 questions sounds tight, but it isn't. That's a minute per question, and most are quick. Read each question slowly anyway. The exam's favorite trick is the plausible but wrong answer that ignores a life cycle or state implication. When you see a scenario, ask yourself, what does the state file think is true here? That single question untangles most of the hard items. Flag anything uncertain and move on. The review screen at the end is your friend. Multi-select questions tell you how many answers to choose. Trust that number. And if you don't pass, you wait a short period, pay again, and retake. It's $70, not a tragedy. But follow the plan we've covered, and you almost certainly won't need to. That's the Terraform Associate 004, demystified, the exam blueprint, the new material, a working demonstration, and a plan to carry you to a pass. Your next step is simple. Open the official study guide and book your exam 4 to 6 weeks from today. A deadline transforms studying from an intention into a habit. If this was useful, subscribe. DevWise publishes calm, practical guides for SREs and DevOps engineers every week. Next time, we go deeper into the topic that decides most real-world Terraform incidents: state. Until then, plan before you apply. Goodbye for now.